Hello and welcome to our new episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the World Crypto Network, guys. We got so much stuff to talk about, so many things. We're going to be talking about the new mining equipment coming in. We're going to be talking about the banks testing out Bitcoin, South Korea not even regulating Bitcoin, and now we have new all-time highs. I mean, holy crap, you guys! It's kind of going a little nuts. I'm trying to keep up with the price, but when you go over $1,000 in less than 48 hours, somebody somewhere is noticing this. So I think we're all pretty happy about that. So let's go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists as per usual on this show. Super proud to bring you guys these panelists and these people and these views from within the Bitcoin community. We got Mr. Pierre Richard, the co-host of the Noted podcast, one of my favorite new podcasts. You guys got to check that out. Pierre, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. Yeah, really glad that you have entered the foray into podcasting. We need as many awesome, Bitcoin podcasts as we can to get the word and news and information out there. And I think you did a really great job. In particular, the last episode, kind of breaking down the whole 2x SegWit 2x fiasco. Just really great, really great. You guys got to check it out. I should have linked that into the show notes, but I will do that after the show is live. So guys, check that out. We got John's not here. I almost said John Carvella. John is not here. I have to erase that from my notes. He will be joining us hopefully another time. You guys got to check out his information. Great information. We got Mr. Francis Pouliot, co-founder and head of research at Cadillacsy.com. How you doing, Francis?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me on, and hello everyone watching.
Awesome, man. Awesome. We got Gabriel Devine joining us for the first time in a little while here. Our resident, conspiracy theorist on the show, ladies and gentlemen, from Future Rant, Gabriel Devine. How you doing, Gabriel?
Thank you so much. I've been having a lot of spies chasing me, and hackers have been preventing me from going on the show and cutting my connection. Bud Thompson here on the chat says that he heard I was dead. I was clinically dead for a short time, and they're chasing me. So I've just been wearing my tinfoil and getting along a lot better lately with that hat.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Gabriel Devine, the real life 007, living abroad, living the dangerous life. So, so excited, guys, to talk to you. We got so much things to talk about. So, guys, thank you again so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and go into our first topic. We have over 400 people already joining us live. So let's get right into it with these new all-time highs, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, holy crap, over 9,300 on Bitstamp, and it just keeps going up everywhere. So I got to get everybody's opinion. Is there like a correction coming? I want to know what's going on here. So let's ask Francis first. Francis, let me ask you, what do you feel about these new all-time highs? And do you see I mean, it's got to correct, right? We always have a correction. What is waiting in the wings to correct Bitcoin this time, Francis? Let us know.
Well, I've abandoned attempting to predict what's going to happen next, obviously in Bitcoin. So I'm not going to speculate as to whether or not it's going to correct. But obviously, I think the trend, the long-term trend is pretty bullish. So I mean, I'm not worried or anything right now. I have three quick observations around the price. So the first observation is when you consider the OTC market and you have these really big spikes in price, like during the week, that really changes a lot of things for the OTC brokers and traders. And in the following way, right? So any business which is a Bitcoin merchant or accepting Bitcoin for anything, even though it's doing like instant hedging or instant conversion, those hedging and conversions are never really instant. They take, at minimum a few hours, and in case of most businesses, like a day, right, to hedge yourself. So any business that's been accepting Bitcoin over the last 3-4 months, just because of that lag in between the time they buy and sell or convert to fiat, they've been doing a lot of money. But also the OTC brokers that are selling Bitcoin to the public, they actually need to buy those Bitcoins back, and the price is rising so much that they're actually kind of losing by selling Bitcoin. So you can expect some of the OTC brokers to just stop selling Bitcoin when this happens, or to really increase their rate. So that's really good. That's really good. A thing you want to see is a shortage of Bitcoins. That's what you want to see on the market. Also, an observation is okay, so you've got the Ethereum community that's been kind of raising all these money through ICOs, but then you have the Bitcoin community that's just been getting richer and richer for the past year, and people have done 10x over the last year. So I think that's really good for the VC market and for people investing in initiatives that support the network. For example, my startup, we're not trying to raise money, but if I was going to say, hey, I want to raise $500,000, and I'm looking for 50 Bitcoiners holders that are willing to pay maybe 10 grand each. I mean, I don't think it would be too hard to raise money from other Bitcoin holders. You look at something we're going to talk about later today, BTC Drax initiative, the Dragonmint. When I put money in it, I think it's kind of like an ICO, right? It's kind of like helping the way that the Ethereum community is helping their network through the investing in those ICOs. I'm like, okay, I'm going to invest in that, take a risk. So I think that's really good. I think Bitcoiners, even though they're very greedy about their Bitcoins, they're going to start investing back into infrastructure. And lastly, the third thing is, even a lot of the infrastructure doesn't need to have people invest in it anymore, because the people that are working on the infrastructure, the developers, they're just all getting like really, really rich. Like if you're a developer and you're holding, and so you increase your net worth, you can live and you can quit your job now and you can work full time on Bitcoin, and then you feel grateful and kind of guilty that you got all that money. You feel very grateful now, you give back to Bitcoin. So these are kind of like the side effects, and the point here is that the price matters. It's not just about the tech. Like the price of Bitcoin also matters, because the way that the technology and game theory and the ecosystem works, the high price helps basically the self-sustainability of the technical infrastructure. So that's something we also need to think about. Just not, it's not about the memes. It's not only about the memes. It's about the memes, but it's not only about the memes. There's all these really positive network benefits that we're going to see coming forward as a result.
Memes change the world, people. Memes got a president elected. So I think memes can definitely do some amazing things. I think memes definitely helped with UASF and definitely helped with the 2X. So the memes were getting really heavy at the end of the 2X there. So very interesting stuff. Yes, we like to hold on to our Bitcoin. Perhaps we will be like Scrooges this year and just hodl our Bitcoins tight. But at the end of the day, guys, when you have these huge high prices, it's always a good idea to please donate to open source projects, like Tor, privacy related projects that try to help users regain their sovereignty and keep their privacy. So definitely try to look around for amazing projects like that. It's always a good idea to donate to those type of projects when we have these amazing highs. So very cool stuff, giving back to the community. Let's go to Pierre. Pierre, Richard, let me ask you, man, what do you think about these new all-time highs? And are we going to see a correction or something? Do you see anything that could give us a correction anytime soon?
Yeah, I agree with everything Francis just said and yourself just said. So I'll just go with what Francis would not talk about, which was predictions. And so I'll pull some predictions out of my ass. And I saw a tweet today saying we're entering the parabolic phase, the blow-off top phase, and it looks like 25,000 might be the top that we end up hitting, and then we correct from there and have ourselves a good long bear market. So I think that right now those thousands are just going to keep rolling by. It's just getting easier and easier to go through the thousands, and I think that really there's everyone's building up a narrative around tethers or whatever it may be. I think that there's a narrative in every bull market, whether it's Willy Bot or Cyprus or China. There's always some kind of meme that people want to turn to explain everything. I think it's just buyers and sellers, and we've run out of sellers is kind of the problem, and we still have buyers. So from there, I think that to get people to sell, to get long-term hodlers to sell, they're going to need a really ridiculous number. And I think my guess is that 25,000 is that number.
Very interesting. Yeah, I really tend to think that 10,000 is kind of a big psychological barrier. That I always thought that once we hit 10,000, we would just explode. Like I thought that 10,000 was always like the bottom of the S curve, where after 10,000 you can really start climbing up, and it's looking like that's about to be that way simply because of the infrastructure that's coming online, like the new futures markets and things like that will probably help prevent such huge explosions of liquidity so fast, because we want to go up in price, but I don't know if we want to go exactly straight up because the corrections can be kind of big. So these future markets will probably help us grow a little bit more steadily, because think about it. I mean, we don't really have real futures markets right now that can actually even really correct Bitcoin in a meaningful way. Pierre, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually don't know that it will reduce volatility. I think that it'll help accelerate price discovery, which may actually increase volatility. So I think that there's feedback loops with futures that could cause the price to go up much faster, especially when you're talking about an asset like Bitcoin, obviously. And then obvious disclaimer is that I have no clue where the price is going. It could crash tomorrow. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, I remember Kim.com, right? Last year tweeting like, we can get Bitcoin to 2,000 by 2020, like no problem. And it's like, wow, Bitcoin continues to, shirk everybody's expectations every single time throughout its history, maybe except for that downturn, that bear run in 2015. Besides that, it just keeps surprising people, at $30, at $250, at $1,200. It's just going to keep blowing away, I think, people's expectations, including my own. I was thinking like 4,000 by 2020, maybe that'd be sweet. But here we are at almost 10,000 at the end of 2017. So Gabriel, last but not least, man, give us your thoughts on this crazy bull run that's going on, and maybe if you think there's anything coming in that could actually correct this thing or not, or if we're just going straight to 100,000 from here. Gabriel, what do you think?
Well, I definitely don't think we're heading straight to 100,000. I think that the next 10x a bit longer than the last 10x, just simply because of the size involved and as well as just where the market is. We were coming out of a bear market, and we established a really strong floor, and this was the year to break out of that. And we were undervalued for so long that there was a lot of pent-up energy, I think, in the side that has really entered in. And I agree with Trace Meyer, or his latest tweet. He does sort of valuation based on the difference between the 200-day moving average and the current price, and calculating the ratio there. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Everything cool? Okay.
Everything's good to go, man. Come on.
Great. So I really like that as opposed to, some other metric. I think that's a really accurate one. And he by his calculations, around 7,000 is kind of where we crossed fair value, and now we're slightly overheated. That doesn't mean that we're going to correct anytime soon, though. Like him, I also agree that we're going to go way overvalued before we correct. And 25,000, Pierre's conjecture there, according to the kind of technical analysis, 25,000 sounds perfectly realistic. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we head up there with a couple of jagged, smaller drops before the next big correction. I could see a 50% from 25 back down to 13, and then continue up. I do think that we're in the middle of the bull market right now. I think we've got about another year to go. It's probably not going to be as steep as it has been this last year. But
you don't think the bull market will go all the way to 2020 halving, or no?
No, I think, that's exactly the reason why I think that the halving will stop, is that not the halving, the bull run will run out of steam before the miners begin saving for the halving. So I think there will be at least a 6-month bear market. And when I say bear market, that could still be up because there's so much interest right now, and we're still in the adoption phase of Bitcoin. So when I say bear phase, that could still mean 100% in a year, but things I predict that will definitely slow down in the first half of 2019. Then the next halving, bull market will come, and that, I think, it was what will take us up 6 figures and above. Right now is just a perfect storm. I mean, we weathered such a hardcore political attack, very well organized. And
multiple attacks. I mean,
multiple attacks. It felt like relatively coordinated, I would say. Although the Bcash and 2x coordination indicates to me, the resident conspiracy theorist, that there was a split in the factions of the attackers against Bitcoin, and one side decided, we're just going to do our own thing because we really genuinely think that we will be able to convince people that big blocks are really good, and that will be our spiel. And the other ones are more, the 2x attack was more of a pure developer attack, which I think, they had the right idea, but the Bitcoin community is just far too intelligent to fall for either ruse. And so it kind of, the two factions definitely weakened the attack. But in any case, that's really in the rear view right now. Bcash doesn't have a future. We still don't have the infrastructure for people who hold Bitcoin from before the fork in August to actually cash it out easily on every platform. The exits are still very immature. When we have the exits running on all cylinders, the price is going to just look like a typical altcoin price, where there was the big pump in the beginning and it just kind of is a flabby downhill process from there. So yeah, that's where I think we're at. Perfect storm, all the troubles in the rear view, and we got a real bullish phase coming up here. This is the beginning.
Awesome. That all sounds good news to me, people. I mean, so keep on spreading the word of Bitcoin. Just want to thank our live audience again so much. Over 849 viewers right now. Thank you guys. If you can just give us a thumbs up or subscribe. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. Giving us a thumbs up help us get into more people's YouTube feeds. So definitely hit that thumbs up, guys. If you like us, hit the thumbs down. If you don't like us, we always get a few of those. We can't please everybody. We're trying our best over here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic here. This one is particularly interesting to me. I added this topic at the last minute, so I just wanted to see maybe if we can go through this a little bit, and because I know a lot of people are asking about this. So let's talk about Bitcoin knots. That's really interesting. I only had heard about this a couple days ago, and so from what I understand so far, this is just another a core compatible Bitcoin implementation, and this is mostly supported by Luke Dash Jr. And so I wanted to hear from the panelists what they think about this, because what's interesting here is that the Bitcoin Thamos, who owns Bitcoin.org, wants to set the default client to Bitcoin knots instead of Bitcoin Core. And I'm all for competition, but this seems a little bit extreme to me on the Bitcoin.org website. So let's go through the panelists and see what we think. Pierre, let's go with you first. What do you think about Bitcoin knots first in general, this implementation from Luke Dash Jr.? And what do you think about Bitcoin.org using this as their default client now instead of Bitcoin Core?
Sure. So Bitcoin knots essentially is a patch set over Bitcoin Core. And it contains changes which basically Luke Dash Jr. has his view of what the policy should be of a Bitcoin node. And this distribution, Bitcoin knots, reflects those policy preferences of Luke Dash Jr.'s. To me, it's telling that he wasn't able to get those policy changes through the Bitcoin Core development process. And to that extent, I think that maybe that, we shouldn't necessarily be encouraging people to run software that has much less review and much less testing than we would expect through the Bitcoin Core process. So I think that it may make sense for you if you're a miner or if you are very opinionated and agree with Luke Dash Jr. to run Bitcoin knots. I don't see that anyone else should be running it. So I think that for the official Bitcoin.org website, well, unofficial Bitcoin.org website, to list it preferentially over any other distribution doesn't seem wise to me. And I think that people should generally be directed towards the Bitcoin Core distribution if they are wanting to run a full node, on a server or desktop or Raspberry Pi if they can.
And again, we're all for competition, but the thing is that when you're talking about a new user, right? We're talking about new users visiting the site. We want them to be using the most tested software possible, right? Because we're talking about people's money here. So we really want them to use the most tested software possible. And right now, the most tested software possible is going through the Bitcoin Core process. So that makes the Bitcoin Core wallet the most tested Bitcoin software on the planet, pretty much. Remember, there's people working on this thing from open source, from companies, from all over the world, getting paid and not getting paid. So it's really important that features go through this type of process. It doesn't have to be the core process, but look, if you can come up with another process that's just as extenuous and just as rigid and just thought provoking here as core. We have to make sure that this software can be stable. We have to make sure that it can be stable, that we're talking about other people's money. So yeah, very important things. Let's go ahead and go to Gabriel next. Gabriel, what do you think about Bitcoin Knots, KNOTS, this implementation from Luke Dash Jr.? And what do you think about Bitcoin.org using this as their default client?
I think it's kind of strange. It was a post that went up and then came down really fast. It could have been just a quick sort of what you might call a marketing device, just not anything serious on Thamos's part. He just wanted to bring a little bit of attention to Bitcoin Knots, and who can blame him? Bitcoin Knots is an awesome project. Luke Dash Jr. is an incredibly talented and amazingly diligent core developer who has invented so many of the amazing features that have been in Bitcoin for years now, and continues to bring his mind to bear on this amazing open source project. Bitcoin Knots is like an edgier version of Bitcoin that has some less tested features. I think Bitcoin Knots is an amazing tool for developers. People who are making using Bitcoin in ways that aren't very well tested yet, or in new ways, using new types of transactions, new types of smart contracts. Knots is the kind of software that's going to incorporate these brand new features before hardly maybe any other software will do it. And I think it's an amazing project. I agree completely with you that it's not appropriate to recommend it as a default client for general use because it's more experimental. And yeah, I think this kind of touches on a general philosophy of version. And I have to admit, I'm kind of on the fence about that. There are a lot of good arguments on both sides of the equation, in my opinion. We want to be more decentralized in case there's a bug in the default client. There's also the issue of Bitcoin. We call it a protocol, but Bitcoin is a little bit unlike most internet protocols in that it's not in its documentation. So it doesn't have a detailed test suite by which a given implementation can be recognized as an official Bitcoin client, in that it totally agrees with a given implementation, or that agrees in with sort of protocol documentation. That doesn't exist in Bitcoin. Maybe someday we will actually go in that direction. The Bitcoin core developers seem a lot more focused on actually writing the software than being really strict about the protocol. But that's so we don't have that. And on the other hand, we have many quotes by Satoshi Nakamoto from the first 2 years of the project, which is extremely early days, where he was warning users and developers to be really careful with creating new implementations in new different languages and things like, for example, we have Bitcoin J in Java and all sorts of different, we've got Bcoin, which is written in JavaScript on whatever, back-end, infrastructure, Node, I think it is, NPM and all that. So, but back in the very, very beginning, the network was so young and so immature that he was extremely conservative about keeping all the peers in consensus. But of course, the basic structure and sending of messages back and forth and the database, this is infrastructure that's finally maturing. I agree that it's early days and it's still a flexible protocol and new things are being added. I mean, SegWit was a very big change, but things are becoming a lot more stable. And so I think that worry is not as intensive as it was in 2010. It's 7 years later. It's not quite as dangerous, I think, to have different protocols. So I think the philosophy of multiple implementations, I think, is still very much in play.
Yep. And I just want to remind everybody again, look, there is over half a dozen implementations of Bitcoin in addition to this new Bitcoin knots, right? Bitcore and Bitcoin J, like Gabriel mentioned a couple of those, and there's a bunch more. And it's really important, I believe, that we do have all of these. I do agree with Satoshi a lot where he said, very, very careful about new implementations. But look, we still need more than one implementation, no matter what. So that's really great that we do have a few. And I would like to keep it a few, right? I don't want to have 100 of these things. You'll never be able to keep track. We don't have enough people in the world to keep track of this because there's only so many people that are smart enough to work on these implementations and things like that. So very important that there's only a few. But just so far, the competition that I've seen is great. Bitcore continues to add more features, and Bcore continues to add, or Bitcoin continues to add more features, and now Luke Dash Jr. with his Bitcoin knots is adding more features. So all of this experimentation is absolutely wonderful. But I just am so thankful that we still have the Bitcoin Core, process in the Bitcoin Core wallet where everything is just very, 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 very hardened and very tested over these 9 years. So very awesome stuff, guys. Let's go to Francis on this topic. Your thoughts on this topic and the discussion so far? You muted, Francis. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think the issue is more surrounding like the Bitcoin.org website, and the context is someone that has the Bitcoin.com website doing shenanigans. So I think everybody's like a little bit stressed out about that. Think about the last time you went to Bitcoin.org for information. I haven't been on Bitcoin.org for a really long time to get information, so we can safely assume that it's kind of new users that are going there. So. Okay, so who should use so there's just the premise is, Bitcoin.org is for new users, and really important to not have like a rogue person misdirect users. I think the website is really great as it is. I don't really think it should change that much, except for some things that, Lightning Network and stuff that goes on. But let's think about who should use the alternative implementations and the general landscape. So Bitcoin Knots is a great implementation. I remember checking it out a few months ago because I think they had something in the GUI that Bitcoin Core didn't have. Perhaps RBF was in the GUI like before Bitcoin Core or something like that. Definitely great. I saw just now that the number of people running Bitcoin Knots just spiked recently. I'm assuming that the recent use made a lot of people download it. That's good. But there's Bitcoin Knots, like these things are mostly made for like developers and experts, because if you think about that, like you can run Bitcoin Core and it's perfectly fine. And then you can run stuff like Bitcore, which is not like an alternative implementation. It's still running on Bitcoin D, but it's like, kind of a layer on top of that. And you have a bunch of other frameworks that are kind of like layers on top of Bitcoin D. You want to use those like middleware. And then you have stuff like, libbitcoin. And libbitcoin, you're going to use libbitcoin if you're like writing a wallet or like an online multi-sig marketplace, and you want some really to use like the core libraries. So like we should direct new users towards like libbitcoin or towards like a BTCD or stuff like that. Like I think.
And real quick, Francis, sorry to interrupt. Let's just remind the people that all these that you mentioned, these are all backwards compatible, right? These are all backwards compatible with Core. Very important to remember that these are all backwards compatible. This is not something like Bcash or something that just went off on its own. Yeah.
Right, and they're not altcoins in the sense that the difference is if they ever change their consensus code, they would kind of become incompatible, or through some other bug, they might actually become incompatible, which is more the risk. I mean, I don't think people expect like libbitcoin to fork off. It would be like a compatibility bug. These things they do get unmaintained, right? You look at Bitcoin J. From what I'm not a developer, but what people tell me, I mean, I remember my kind of hacker friends back in the day saying, "Don't touch Bitcoin J. That's super sketchy stuff. I'm never going to touch that." And there's other things like Bitcore. Like a lot of the web apps are based off Bitcore, and it's just unmaintained. So Satoshi Labs had to fork Bitcore. I'm actually running Satoshi Labs' fork, and then and they need to maintain it and that's kind of the danger of pushing people towards these implementations that kind of get abandoned. And then you have some kind of defunct infrastructure, and then the businesses, they have to change after that. So it's really difficult. So I would just say, like, I would rather push new users on Bitcoin Core and just leave the alternative implementations more for the experienced developers or experts that kind of know what they're doing.
Absolutely, yep. Makes a lot of sense. So I think we've kind of all agreed there on this particular thing. We all like these all these implementations, but when it comes to new users, I mean, like Bitcoin.org, that needs to be the most secure and security hardened wallet. So very interesting stuff. And let's just remind everybody too that Luke Dash Jr. has done amazing stuff. Like one of my favorite things is when everybody was like, "There's just no way we can do Segwit in a soft fork," and here comes Luke Dash Jr. is like, "I see no reason why we can't do that," and everybody's like, "What?" And he's like, he just lays it out on everybody in the chat room, and everybody's like, "Holy shit!" Like, excuse my language, guys, but wow, we could actually do it in a soft fork, and so that's just amazing stuff. I mean, there's so many people in the community that contribute to Bitcoin, so just amazing stuff. And even like John Newberry, even like he's working at Chaincode Labs, doing a lot of helping a lot of the testing suite. Gabriel, you mentioned that Bitcoin doesn't have a whole huge testing architecture, but there's people like John Newberry and others that are working on this stuff. And it is early days, like you mentioned, Gabriel, but yeah, this stuff is all coming together, and the price is following, and this is just amazing stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to another topic here. I think this is the third topic already. We're moving along pretty well here. So if everybody could give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the World Crypto Network, hit that bell, pound that like button, as Adam Meister likes to say. We're over 923 viewers right now, so thank you guys so much for joining us. We're enjoying the conversation here and in the chat. And of course, if you guys missed the show, definitely join us in the comments. We have a lot of fun in there. So let's move on to our next topic here about this new miner manufacturers that seems to have sprouted up out of nowhere over the past couple of days to the general public like myself here. Of course, a lot of the Bitcoin insiders knew about this kind of thing. But look, this we try to bring you guys as fresh as news and information as we can, and this is pretty amazing stuff. We got Mr. BTC Drac, out there trying to start this new mining company with these Dragonmint miners. And then even on the other side of the world too, we have ebang. I believe they're in China trying to compete with Bitmain as well. So we have all these companies starting to sprout up to compete directly with Bitmain. And it's kind of like I always said, like I wasn't really worried too much about this mining centralization because it's going to ebb and flow. It's as Bitcoin price goes up, there's going to be more incentive for people to start mining companies. It's just the way it is. If there's more money to be made, there's going to be more people in the game. And it's pretty hard to hide and run away from Bitcoin at this point in its history. So very cool stuff. Let's go with Gabriel first here. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on this new miners from BTC Drac, Dragonmint, and maybe the thought of finally ending the monopoly of Bitmain?
Yeah, I guess hardware is tough. It takes time to put it together. There's a lot of advantages to early movers, and it became very clear to the insiders in the Bitcoin community already back in 2014 that there was a lot of need for more manufacturing, for us to spread out and create these special chips in as many different places as possible. But then we entered the bear market, and it was probably difficult to get R&D budgets, VC money, angel investment money to these companies to put their money, excuse me, into any Bitcoin type of vehicle, company of any type. So I guess really the money only started flowing in last year when the bull market started. I have a feeling, because it sounds like they've been working on this thing for 12 to 18 months and, developing this hardware. It takes time. There's a lot of testing. But we did say that this was happening. I have to say it took longer than I was hoping. I guess not everybody has the same bullish attitude that, the four of us have had over the past 4 or 5 years. We never lost our faith in Bitcoin. Just a simple price drop didn't change the arithmetic involved and the basic evolutionary nature of a digital money that's decentralized. So it was a long time coming for us insiders, but in the bigger scale of things, I completely agree with you that this was inevitable. And things ebb and flow. I do think that we're going to actually peak miner centralization was in 2015 or whatever, and that is firmly also in the rearview mirror. Yet another incredibly bullish development for the Bitcoin ecosystem. So this is really amazing, really fantastic, and in my opinion, just in time.
Absolutely, yep. I think it couldn't have been more perfectly timed. Just with the price and with the timing, with the ecosystem, with the news. I mean, it just really couldn't have been a more perfect time to enter this. And again, we've been trying to say miner centralization is just temporary. A lot of people use that as FUD all the time when they try to talk about Bitcoin. They're like, look, yo, you're just having China coin, and it's like, you guys, you have to think long term, right? That's another thing Adam Meister likes to say, right? You guys got to think long term. I mean, we're talking here. This is a brand new asset class that will be with us it's the first new asset class in 100 years. It will be with us for another 100 years at least. So pretty amazing stuff. Let's go to Francis next on this topic. I think you have some interesting things to say about these Dragonmint miners. Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Gabriel said, the manufacturing of the Bitcoin mining has been very centralized and a pressing issue for a lot. And I mean, I don't think people realize how big Bitmain actually is and how much money they actually make. It's really a massive, massive company, and they will not without a fight. They are very aggressive towards their competition. I've had many different kind of examples of many different people. You just don't cross Bitmain and kind of expect to stay in business. You know what I mean? So that's one of the reasons why the development of like miners, they just kind of pop up out of nowhere, right? It's like, oh, we have the Dragonmint, and so it can be kind of off-putting for a lot of people to like, oh, it just looks like a clone of the S9. So that's kind of the context. And I mean, so there's been a lot of development for new miners, but Dragonmint and Heilong mining is different for one reason. For the main reason is that there's actually a shop on the website, right? So you look at ebang. I mean, yeah, they're selling to the public, but I mean, Dragonmint is specifically made to be sold to the public very early. You look at what they're doing in Japan. It doesn't seem clear to me that they're going to sell the miners that they're developing, those 7 nanometer chips at retail. It seems, or they haven't talked about selling to the public, so we can assume that they might be mining with them. But Dragonmint is the goal is specifically to put as many miners into people's hands. So the background of that is that, like many people with UASF, I started to get more interested in mining and more in touch with, getting back in touch with the mining roots. And I saw a lot of people do that. So as I was kind of pushing UASF and then No2X, it became very apparent to me that a lot of the kind of OGs had the same reflection. And, I had already started, turning their eye towards mining, realizing, shit, we've been developing all this software, we've been doing all those things, and we kind of forgot about the mining element. So we need to go disrupt that a little bit more. So there was a lot of OGs that came to me, and we talked. A lot of people talked about getting a lot of the kind of No2X USF holders to invest a little bit in mining. So there was, I had heard about the Dragonmint miner for quite some time. Not under that name, but I had heard rumors and people talking to me about working on a miner to disrupt Bitmain's monopoly. And the people working on the miner were self-funding kind of the R&D, and they were kind of coming to some of the Bitcoin people, telling them, once it comes out, kind of our contribution, I guess, is to help them sell that miner to people. But there wasn't a name to this project. I just know that a lot of people were working on it. Not a lot, but people that are very trustworthy in the community had like personally confirmed the specs were real, that they were working on it. But Heilong Mining as a brand, I had not known about until the day it came out. So that was kind of, I don't know if you guys remember, when it came out, it was kind of weird because you had like statements by Slush, statements by Adam Back. Nobody kind of knew what was going on. The thing was tested apparently at Slush's office, but they had nothing to do with it. So I mean, I'm not sure about Heilong Mining as a brand. I'm not sure about the Dragonmint as a product. So I personally bought some myself. They are extremely good if the specs are real. I mean, I actually work for miners to develop ROI projections for them. And just to tell you, like, I convinced my family to buy those miners. and I don't do that. You know, I don't get people into buying stuff. But for these ones, I mean, in Quebec, it's definitely, as long as you're not spending Bitcoin with, you know, worrying about the opportunity cost of that, as long as you weren't going to put money in Bitcoin, if you're just thinking about the fiat perspective, and, you know, you're in a region like Quebec where it's cheap electricity, they're very profitable. They should be about, you know, 15% more profitable overall than S9s, and start shipping in March. So that's about it. I mean, the idea also
15%. That's pretty awesome. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, 15%, and they're about well, Bitmain brought down the price of the S9 just before or after that, but they were about twice as less expensive before Bitmain brought the price of the S9 down a tiny bit. So the idea for this miner, as I understand it, is specifically it was created, you know, to disrupt Bitmain's monopoly. It is created to be sold at a retail level, very highly encouraged, and it's also meant, I think, over time to become open source. The idea is that people will contribute to the open source project, and certain, you know, brands will kind of sell the kind of finished product at some point, but it would become, I think the idea, and I don't know that as inside info, just from what I've heard, I think the idea is to kind of build a community around this open source project and have entrepreneurs, maybe like BTC Drac, you know, actually invest in, you know, making orders at the foundry, because when you make a new miner, you need to get this, you know, the specs for the foundry first. This is like costs a lot of money. But then after that, you know, the foundries, they're not gonna make miners unless they have like, you know, 9-figure commitments, you know, or very close to 9-figure commitments. They're not gonna start making new chips, right? So, you know, you need to make, so you need guys like BTC Drac that could put their money on the line. So I'm not sure if we're gonna get scammed here. I have to say the whole experience of buying the miner was, and I say this with all respect to Halon Mining, it was pretty sketchy, to be fair. You know, I didn't get a payment confirmation after 2.5 days that my Bitcoins had been received. Just acknowledgement of Bitcoin being received. That was really stressful. The website has no contact info or anything like that. You know, you're sending Bitcoin and you're just crossing your fingers. So yeah, it's super risky, super high risk. But one thing I'm gonna do is, you know, I think a lot of the OGs took a personal risk, because we believe in Drac and kind of owe him I certainly feel like I owe him personally, you know, because of UASF and what he's done for that. So that's the way I see it. I mean, I just, you know, all I'll say is, like, we just got some Bitcoin Gold, we just got some Bcash. You know, if you want to help the network, just dump that and either huddle the Bitcoins. It's perfectly fine. It's a good way to help the network because you're removing it from the circulating supply, but also investing in a miner. Maybe not, I'm not saying invest in that one, but, you know, if it comes out to be legit and a real miner, and if it comes out that this miner is gonna, you know, there's an actual, if you want to do something about Bitmain's monopoly and the miner comes out as being legit, you know, definitely consider buying it.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, because we have had a lot of sketchy stuff in the past, you know, with people starting up miners like Butterfly Labs and things. And so people have every right to be scared. And again, like you said, even in the beginning, these early days, it's going to be a little sketchy. It's taking 2.5 days to confirm. But again, there's the risk there. But again, this is all just like, you know, kind of seat of our pants. I mean, of course, they're doing every bit of research they can, but this is just bleeding edge.
And also just to say, like, from a mining operator's perspective, like, Bitmain sucks, but Bitmain's like, they're not actually reliable that much, but you know that they're going to be reliable over time. You know, you kind of expect some standard of reliability. You know, sometimes there's bugs. You know, with L3, you know, they kind of I think they kind of mined a little bit to kind of get SegWit to play with SegWit activation to be shipping them out. So Bitmain's, you know, kind of sketchy company, but they're very reliable. But, you know, imagine 15%, if you're making like $1 million in profits from, like, say, from a $1 million investment, you make $1 million profit, you can make 150K more by buying Drac's miner, but you can also lose all of the money that you sent to Drac. And people should remember, look up BFL and look up, you know, Hashfast and all those things.
Butterfly Labs, Hashfast, yeah.
So if you don't know about these scams because you're new and you think the ICO are the worst of it, like, look at the mining pre-order scams. This is typically how, I mean, I cannot even imagine the amount of billions of dollars have been lost in today's worth. billions of dollars, of course, they were paid in Bitcoins have been lost because of that. So it's a very high risk. That's all I say. But,
well, Bitcoin comes from very, very humble beginnings, people. You have to understand, this is just like the internet. This stuff comes from very, very humble and simple beginnings and stuff. But look, we're still early days, and so we're still going to have these type of projects that maybe don't have the whole infrastructure that something like Bitmain has, right? But this is just amazing that we can finally have something in the works here to compete with Bitmain. And again, this was inevitable, but at the same time, we have to commend people like Drac for bringing this idea to the forefront, because we have been, making amazing software. But look, it's time for the world to start really decentralized Bitcoin mining. The prices are getting high. The miners are pulling shady tactics. It's now time. It is perfect timing to go ahead and further decentralize this. So I'm super, super excited and bullish for the future. And again, these guys, they're even talking about open sourcing a lot of this technology for these Dragon miners. So you could do things like this could help the whole community. This could help. This could really be the beginning of the decentralization of Bitcoin mining. So very, very interesting stuff. Pierre, let's hear your thoughts on this so far, on the discussion so far, and these new miners, and from ebang and Dragonmint, and from who else is waiting in the wings. What do you think, Pierre?
Yeah, I think Francis, I don't have nearly as much information on this as Francis does, so that was a very interesting. So I think that on the one hand, UASF and No2x showed that ideological mining is impotent against the network of nodes, which is Bitcoin. So to that extent, I think the theory of miners being voters was refuted, which was kind of a weird democracy theory being put forth from some corners of the SegWit2x camp. So to that extent, I don't see the purpose of having ideologically motivated mining companies that are looking to, achieve a certain end or have a certain view on scaling or on what Bitcoin is, et cetera, because they're just contractors of us, the Bitcoin hodlers, users, businesses, economic majority, whatever you want to call that, the consensus that we all agree to. So on the other hand, it does make sense to me that with ideologically friendly miners who are interested in level 2 scaling and who are interested in the kinds of improvements and upgrades to Bitcoin that I want, it would be nice to have 95% of the hash power completely simpatico with what I believe. That way, for example, SegWit, we wouldn't have had to twist arms and threaten UASF. They would have just done it. And that would have been that. That would have saved us a lot of time. And it would have saved us the nonsense that came along with SegWit2x and their fantasy of keeping control over Bitcoin's consensus. So I really hope it works out, and I hope that both the economics of the mining company putting out the hardware and BTC Drac, I hope that it works for them, and I hope that it works for the people who buy the miner. I'm not qualified to speak as to the probability of it working out or what the profit opportunities are. If it does work out, I hope to move to Quebec and hang out with Francis. That way I can run my mining lab and keep the heater on.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome plan. I think I'll join you there, Pierre. Sounds like a good time. Maybe eventually we'll just get our own island like Roger Ver, and we'll see what happens. Very, very cool, guys. All right. Before we move on to the next topic, just want to again thank the over 1,000 live viewers, guys, for watching us, for watching this show. If you guys find these opinions valuable, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the World Crypto Network. Let's go ahead and go on to another topic here. We got
Vertex.
Sorry.
Vertex, can I make just a little tiny comment regarding to what Pierre said? Everything makes sense if your premise that the lesson has been learned, the miner voting theories debunked, is correct, right? I don't think it's correct. I don't think the lesson has been learned at all, because still the Bitcoin celebrities that were pushing to X on Twitter, they're still kind of acknowledging miner voting as a phenomenon, and we're a very small group of people who understand this lesson, right? So regardless of everything, I think that miner, I know that it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't seem like it makes a difference, but having Bitcoin Core friendly miners definitely a net positive. And one thing that I've seen with these new miners is that individuals want to mine these with this miner. A lot of individuals, they want to buy like one of these miners. And what I'm seeing is that I think a model for I want as many people as possible to have like at least one miner in their hands. And I think the kind of hosting model where you have professional mines that are not doing cloud mining, that are doing really customer-friendly hosting services, where a guy like Pierre, you don't need to move to Montreal. You can just buy a miner, send it to my buddy's Bitcoin mine, and then it has your name on it. You can, take a plane and take a selfie with your miner. You can call it something, and you can, smell the hot Bitcoins coming out whenever you want. So I think that's like really great. And with this miner, we're definitely seeing that in Quebec, like individuals. The people that come at the meetups, like 2,000 people come at our meetups generally. Like all these people have enough money to buy a miner, and that's kind of the better lesson here. And my last controversial comment I'll say is that changing proof of work is really lazy. Mining is hard, and like investing in Bitcoin mining is really difficult. And nothing. Proof of work change isn't a solution. So just want to say that part of the reason why I always said that is because I have a lot of clients in mining and I've invested a lot in mining. But generally speaking, there's no barrier to entry. So there's no as far as I see, there's no market failure, and there's no market failure we need to correct with a magic proof of work fix. All we need to do is to grow some balls and invest in mining. That's what we got to do if you want things to change.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the proof of work change talk is definitely a little premature. But again, this is why we have these amazing ideas like Drac coming up with these miners. I think I have to agree a little bit with you. I have to still think about this, but I definitely agree that we need to invest more in mining before we need to do a proof of work change. Because again, I mean, this is possible. There is zero barrier to entry, in theory, where anybody can start up a mine. Anybody. All you need is the capital, and capital can be acquired. This is not something that's hard. There's trillions and trillions of dollars in the markets. There's capital can be acquired. Did you have something else, Francis? Or no, okay, sorry. Yeah. So and it's pretty crazy stuff. So I definitely have to agree with that. It's interesting things, guys. Interesting times. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic here. We have a couple of different banks, these large banks now that are starting to experiment with Bitcoin. It seems because South Korea's second largest commercial bank, Shinhan, has begun testing Bitcoin vault and wallet services. So like we have these huge banks, and South Korea also. We're not going to get to the topic after that, which is that South Korea also recently announced that they have no plans to regulate Bitcoin, any type of Bitcoin trading or anything like that. So this is really interesting. All this stuff happening in South Korea and Japan to compete with China and the rest of the world. Very interesting stuff. So I want to hear, maybe we'll start with Pierre on what do you think about this, Pierre, about these banks beginning to adopt Bitcoin services, for example, like vault and wallet services, just regular banks. Is this a sign of things to come? Is South Korea taking the plunge just before everybody else does, or are they just crazy? What do you think, Pierre?
I think that they are benefiting from a much better regulatory environment than a lot of other countries. So it's from what I understand of the Korean financial system, their regulators are not as strict as ours, and opening up opportunities like this. It is inevitable in a sense, right? We're going to have incumbent banks who start providing financial services relating to Bitcoin, and we're going to have startups like Coinbase that are competing with them. Which one gets the upper hand? Which one, captures the market share is really just to be seen. I wouldn't rule out existing banks being adaptive enough to catch the opportunity and become, Bitcoin depositories and Bitcoin brokers and Bitcoin exchanges. There's no reason why they can't if they have the right leadership.
Very interesting, and because remember, there's also some news this week about the EU mobile banking app Revolut announcing Bitcoin services as well. So it's not just South Korea, but it's really interesting stuff. So yeah, like you said, I have to agree. That's really interesting that all these people now coming into the space, like let's say the end of this year and beginning of 2018, have this advantage of being further down the time-space continuum, right? Having this advantage of having all this regulation being put in place prior to, you know, what we saw, for example, in 2013, when we were just starting. So yeah, this seems like it's with more and more knowledge and more research, we can just keep continuing to have Bitcoin grow across all sorts of countries and all sorts of services. So we'll go with Gabriel next. Gabriel, what do you think about, you know, the EU mobile bank Revolut and all the growth in South Korea, and now the South Korea's largest bank testing Bitcoin services? What do you think about this? Is this a sign of times to come?
Yes, it is. So this is kind of two different questions. Revolut is a fintech company. They're not a bank. They bank with some UK bank or other. And I have checked out that company online, and I've checked out the UX. A friend of mine lives in London and is a Revolut user. We talked about that. They also have two different products I was checking out. They've got business as well as personal fintech. And my friend is a software developer, and we talked about the UX, and it sounds like they're really on top of that. So that's pretty cool for Revolut. But of course, for fintech, in my opinion, really fintech should be focusing on UX more than anything, even though they have to do so much regulatory crap in order to be able to even offer the products that they're envisioning. But you know, crypto is a natural fit for fintech, because on the user side, it's really, you know, no different to shunt around euros, pounds, and dollars than it is, you know, to just throw Bitcoin in there as one of your options. I mean, it sort of abstracts away any of the actual banking, and it makes it so that, you know, money is like an app. And of course, that's not revolutionary at all. It's really a user experience thing until you bring crypto into the equation. So on the product side, it's trivial. Now, regulatory-wise, they have to do a bunch of work and hire a big legal team and all that stuff, but it's a natural fit for all sorts of fintech companies. So I think that that's an inevitability. And in my opinion, you know, basically, these fintech companies, I think, will probably begin buying wallet companies and sort of merging with the wallet space, because the traditional banking fiat central banking money infrastructure and legal infrastructure will begin to just go away, because there won't be any capital in it over the next 20 years. Now, on the banking side, we've got two main functions, historical functions of banks. We've got storage and security, right? This is the function of banks where it's a you know, where they're a trusted third party, right? Where you trust them to store your gold, you know, historically, and silver. And then the other side is the lending side of banks. And banks are specialists in physical security. So I have a feeling that, now they do have some cybersecurity, but in my opinion, they've historically been very bad at it, because they have the backstop of central bank insurance that will just issue more fiat into the economy and devalue everybody else's money just to bail out one of their member banks. In other words, central banks are just bank associations, right? They're private, like the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England. These are privately owned. So I have a feeling that companies like BitGo, you know, technology companies, are actually going to take over that space, and banks won't be fleet enough to keep up. Now, maybe a couple will be able to make the transition, but I have a feeling virtually all banks will fail to make the transition into digital, you know, cryptographic money storage. The other function of banks, lending, you know, sound money lending is nearly opposite in most ways to cryptographic, you know, sound money lending. Fiat money lending and sound money lending are kind of the entire like gut and intuition that you hear, like, you know, these finance creeps on Twitter. Every comment they make is like exactly opposite of the appropriate perspective, and their predictions keep being 180 degrees wrong. And that's really interesting. But those very few people in lending who do understand sound money. The libertarians, the Austrian economics guys, the metals enthusiasts, they've been prepared for a free banking and sound money lending system, so they might be able to make the transition, but it's a very small group of people. I'd love to hear Pierre's thoughts on that.
Pierre, do you want to respond real quick? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I agree, and I think that there's also a part of me that hopes that that banks don't survive so that we can have new models take place. You know, like peer-to-peer lending. Why not have, use the same sort of cryptography and hash functions and these different technologies that we've been exploring in the context of Bitcoin and apply them to other financial services. On top of that, you have other innovations like autonomous drones. If you could, as a small business, lend and have a loan be secured by a piece of equipment that is inspected by an autonomous drone instead of someone who goes out there in the field to inspect it, it opens up other. It reduces the barrier to access to financial services. So that's kind of why I hope that we have Bitcoin hodlers essentially become the bankers of tomorrow so that they can use all of these innovative technologies that are either completely unrelated to Bitcoin or peripheral to it, but just the fact that they blew up the model and are creating a new company that they can open up creative pathways.
Hodlers of today are the bankers of tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first. Let's go to Francis on his thoughts on this so far, on banks seemingly beginning to bring Bitcoin into their services, or bringing Bitcoin services into their traditional finance services. Francis, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm a little jealous because in Canada, the banking sector is extremely conservative. So I consider it a win when I can see the B word within a bank and not, get thrown out. The Bitcoin word, not the blockchain word. So it's a totally different environment, right? So everything that's been said, specifically regarding, these banks the fintechs should be looking at Bitcoin. The banks are looking at the fintechs to incorporate them eventually. So it would make sense that the fintechs incorporate Bitcoin to, increase their attractiveness to get acquired by a bank and stuff like that. But I'm really not seeing that here. For instance, you look at the fintech companies out here. They're not. Fintech is the one sector where there's no innovation. There's really so little innovation. And I speak about, when I say fintech, I don't mean real financial technology. Fintech, right? Stuff like that. Lightning Network is fintech. A new mobile banking app is not fintech. It's an app.
So
right?
you tell me Venmo is not fintech?
I mean, if Venmo is, no, it's not fintech. It's user experience technology, right? In the area of financial services. But I'm the only one using this definition of fintech, right? So that's the real definition of financial technology. But
I totally agree. It's like FinUX. It's not fintech.
Yeah, exactly. It's FinUX. That's exactly it. Fin onboarding, reducing onboarding costs. I don't want to sound like a TED Talk speaker, but innovation now by speed and not scale, and the businesses that of the future are the businesses that are fast and adaptive, and not the ones that are the most scalable. In the fintech space, it's extremely risk averse. There's companies that they have MVPs for 3 years where people can load funds onto their mobile banking app and then pay their bills. And they've been doing it for 3 years. And I mean, I have a big unfunded Bitcoin startup, and I do that. What I need to be able to do my Bitcoin stuff, right? So we're doing Bitcoin exchanges are so much more advanced, in the back end and the settlement, and they're exposed to all these risks and all these frauds and all these banking shutdowns. So the traditional fintech startups aren't doing well, when you compare them to Bitcoin companies in the market right now. I think they're doing really terrible, and a lot of the investments that I've seen in fintech are not doing well. I shouldn't be saying that because I'm a huge proponent of fintech in Montreal, but I don't think a lot of people in Montreal watch this. But seriously, fintech is great, but I don't see it being that innovative. And regarding the banks, like, yeah, of course, like one of them I've been saying, like, they should accept Bitcoin deposits, because once you accept Bitcoin deposits, you have Bitcoins that you don't need to be able to use, right? You're loaning and borrowing Bitcoins anyway on trading platforms and super sketchy sites. Why doesn't like the Royal Bank of Canada or like some big American bank, act as the lender, or why not? And I mean, they should be getting into that, and they're going to have to do it sooner or later, because they're going to have, there's going to be a demand for people to store their Bitcoins. Like, I don't know if you saw, Coinbase just launched a custodial service. Now the banks, like, forget the fintech companies, like the banks are competing directly with Coinbase now to have custody of people's Bitcoins. Like, they should just be getting onto that. Unfortunately, I'm still being briefed sometimes by people before meetings to not even mention the word disruption. Disruption is not, like, I can't say that in sometimes list of words I can't say. So I'm not as optimistic, although that's what I advise financial services companies, like in banks, to, fintech is great, and you should look at blockchain and Hyperledger for your back-end settlement and so forth. But for real, why don't you just go after the low-hanging fruit? Look at the bills. My company would get out of business from like the day to the day after. Well, not really, because I would still have some OGs that would use me. But like, I mean, a business like Bills, a bank starts to offer people the ability to deposit in their bank account with Bitcoin, and then from there they can already pay their bills. I'm done for, right? The bank could make every Bitcoin exchange or broker out of business almost instantaneously. If you had in your bank account the ability to just switch from USD to Bitcoin, would you go onto Coinbase? Probably not. So one bank could put us all out of business. But as I said, I'm not too worried, just because from what I've seen, they're just not going to be able to pull it off, even if they try, and they're not trying that much where I'm from. Thoughts on that? But I mean, in Europe, and I don't know if it was Asia, I mean, it just totally makes sense for a bank just to, also the banks are also already taking on some of the liabilities of banking Bitcoin exchanges anyway. Because in many jurisdictions, Bitcoin exchanges are not like, it's not like the US where they're just kind of regular customers. And when the banks allow those Bitcoin companies to be banked, taking like a lot of the risk themselves. So while they're taking risks, they might as well make the money, right?
Yep. Amazing stuff, Francis. Again, thank you so much for giving us your insights into dealing with the banks, man, as a Bitcoin company. Very interesting. Thanks so much. Guys, thanks so much for your information. I had a great time here. We had over 1,000 viewers for most of the entire show. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we really hope that you guys get some information and some valuable information out of this show. We really try to bring it to you every Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific live. We do things live. We're doing it live. That's how we do it. So we really appreciate you guys in the chat. The chat's been scrolling by like crazy. So very fun stuff. We will be back again, of course, like I said, next Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Let's say goodbye to these guys before we go. So Francis, where can we find out more information about you? You're muted, sir.
Yeah, sorry. More information at satoshiportal.com or bills.com. It's the same company, basically. Bills is just the name of the website and service. And also galaxy.com.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Gabriel Divine, where can we find you, sir?
Right here on the World Crypto Network, as well as Twitter at Gabriel Divine. Please hit me up. My DMs are open. I'm getting flooded with as many as one direct message every few weeks. So, just keep up the great work. I love hearing from you guys. No, but seriously, hit me up on Twitter. I, really love to hear from you guys. There's so many wonderful listeners of this network and really supportive people and cool people, smart people saying, tweeps and listeners just coming in with great ideas, great memes. So bring it on. Looking forward to seeing you.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's where you'll find Gabriel Divine, people on Twitter and on the World Crypto Network. Pierre, where can we find out more information about you?
Yeah, Google Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. Read everything on there. And then go find me on Twitter at Pierre_Rochard. And I started a podcast with my co-host, Michael Goldstein, Follow him on Twitter at Bitstein. And thanks for having me on, Vortex. And it was great speaking with you, Francis and Gabriel.
Awesome, man. You had a great time, Pierre. Thanks again for joining us. And guys, definitely check out the World Crypto Network audio stream. We do have iTunes and SoundCloud on there. We're adding a bunch of other shows on there, like Adam Meister and Andy Hoffman. So that has been added to the stream, and we're trying to get more and more content. So definitely check that out. It's a great stream. If you guys prefer to listen instead of watch our lovely faces here, you guys. I don't know why you'd want to do that. I mean, come on. But guys, thanks again so much for joining us. We will be back again. Until next time. Keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you guys later.
Early days, people.